Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another DADCAW. It is 11:30 in the evening of Saturday, the 4th of July, 2020, and you may hear some fireworks in the background. I mean, odds are you won't, but I hear them. They are going off. Pretty sure they're not a figment of my imagination. It's just that the noise gate on this thing is pretty epic, so you probably won't hear too much. Of course, this will be the one time it fails, and you will hear something, and then you can post in the comments about how dumb I am. So, anyway, that all said and done, let's talk about what's been going down. This is actually officially the catch-up DADCAW. We've been short one for a while now, so happy to round that out and be caught up in that sense. And one of the things that I've been noticing lately as far as time management goes is that I am picking up more projects instead of setting up the ones that I already have down and actually finishing them. Not in the way of like more StarCraft projects or more video projects, but I always have waited until completing a certain video production or completing, say, like a map crap or some other like side map that I'm interested in, like a melee map, for example. In the past, I'm always pretty good about stopping one of them in terms of development, either dropping them or finishing them before moving on to the next. And that has definitely been something that I've been trying to repeat, trying to make consistent, because I do feel like if you overfill your plate, you end up not reaping the rewards of having more things on your plate. You actually just end up overwhelmed. So I have been trying to remove myself from that equation and make it so that I'm as in control as possible with this sort of thing. That being said, there are, I guess, the scale of things that I've been putting on my plate has been larger. So I need a bigger plate, I guess, to follow the analogy. It's one of those things that, we talked about the StarCraft playthrough, and I really want to be on point. I really want to be on my game for that production. I want to be able to generate high quality content at every single time that I'm pushing the record button for that. And I don't think that that's necessarily out of the question. I don't think it's difficult. I just need to make sure that I'm, on point, relatively speaking. There were a few times where I pushed the record button for like the Zerg expansion campaign or any of the other campaigns where I just wasn't necessarily feeling it, and I am glad that I was able to push through that. But I wonder if there's a strategy I can employ so that I can still be pushing the record button as often, but not worry about the whole motivational thing or lack of energy or anything like that affecting the end result. It's one thing to always be doing a job, and that is half the battle, because without doing a job at all, you can't do a good job. But it is still another thing to do a good job. And I definitely want to do a good job. I want to do a great job. I want to provide you guys good content. And of course, myself, I am one of the purveyors of my own content. I do go back and watch a lot of this stuff and soak it all in and see what's been going down at this time frame, at this year, at this month, on this day. Where was I at? What was my headspace like? And how was I feeling? And, you kind of get a lot of that through a playthrough, because there's just a lot of that stuff just leaks out, even if it wasn't the main purpose of the playthrough itself. So I do very frequently double speed through my own videos, in part to review and in part to actually see if the content was worth a second watch, or I guess worth a watch at all, but it's a second run through because I've already done it. So just in that sense, it's a self-serving aspect of it, comes into play, despite the fact that I do think that there's value outside of my own subjective attachment to the project. I think it's one of those things, that playthrough, that will hopefully help a lot of developers produce higher quality content than Blizzard, but also just in general, like, people should aspire to be better than Blizzard. And this goes for people who are beyond developers, right? Even beyond that sort of small, vanishingly small minority of individuals, the consumer base should aspire to have standards that demand higher quality than what Blizzard can give them, and similar companies, of course. So I hope that I can impart some knowledge of that, and at the very least argue for a better product that will, hopefully be convincing enough. We'll see what happens, but if I can convince a few people that they should be looking for something better, higher quality than what Blizzard offered them back in 1998, which is basically the same thing that they offered them in 2017 when the remaster came out. I think I got my dates right. Then we should be able to come away thinking that the project, the whole video process, was a success. And that is what I intend to do. But I suppose the whole whether or not I'm on my game question comes into play more so on my end than yours as a viewer. But I suppose if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to communicate them to me. So another thing you can comment on and talk about how dumb I am. First thing, of course, being the fireworks that seem to have ceased. Of course, they kindly cut all contact and completely shut down the operation as soon as I pushed the record button. Very nice gentlemen over there who have been doing this for like a week now. I don't know what's going on with them. They seem to be very patriotic, very obsessed, and all the more power to them. Celebrate this great nation that we have built here with the Frauds Club. It's excellent. Really just something else. So, what else has been going down? Obviously been working on Hydra. Specifically, I've been streaming some of my programming experience, and I know it's not the most titillating viewing experience, but it's necessary work that I'm glad I'm able to carve out time for on a fairly regular basis, and it is definitely something that requires a certain mindset, certain state of mind. I definitely look at it like, for me, I would like to be able to come away from Hydra itself thinking that I'm armed much, much better equipped with the tools and the skills and the techniques and the experience necessary to produce my own real-time strategy game. That is always the end game, is producing my own content and a whole lot of it. And while Hydra is very much my own in theory, it's still built within somebody else's engine and technically within somebody else's universe, although the story isn't really that important. It's just one of those things that provides me with enough of a foundation to get a reasonable project out the door, I think. And it's a nice way for me to aspire to greatness and aspire to objectively high quality end result. But not worry too much about getting all the way there all by myself. And even beyond working within somebody else's foundation, I'm still not by myself. I got a ton of help now, way more than I ever thought possible. It's one of the interesting things that has happened recently is that Mesk has been making a foray back into his Armageddon Onslaught total conversion, or I guess it was more of a tech demo, like AI thing. He's made total conversions before, but this one was more replacing a single race and providing a large number of, it was basically an AI that was meant to play 7 versus 1. And I think mostly he had to make a lot of shortcuts and caveats and concessions. There's a lot of issues with the end result, and I guess you can trace that back to a lot of concessions made due to the engine limitations and the lack of tools at the time. But it is definitely a project that, just by virtue of him being at the helm, I'm certainly interested in, because I think you can expect that he won't be... for one, he's probably not going to publicate it whatsoever anyway. But for another, I think you can expect that he would not be comfortable releasing it even to his own private tester group or whatever, if unless he felt convinced of its quality. And that's such a rare trait to find in general, in like really no matter what kind of field you're in, people who are actually concerned with the quality of their work. I've obviously bucked the trend of not releasing anything until I'm convinced of its quality, because really I built Hydra at first as a way to have a better campaign project, but then it quickly evolved into something where the remastered version was much a tech demo of what remastered was capable of, as well as what I was capable of at the time. But also the current version that is now available for public download and mass consumption is really just designed as a way for us to have a better, more exciting melee gameplay, melee game state with which to partake in our group events, our community events. So that's much more of a immediate emergent reason to release it out of schedule in that sense. Whereas obviously I've been particularly close-lipped about a lot of my other projects, and so much so that if they're not ready, I simply wait until they are, and I don't really work on them, or rather I don't really publicate the work that I've done on them. Certainly I produce some developer materials, but who knows if those will ever see the light of day. Really, it depends on whether or not the project comes out, or I find a way to repurpose it in some other way. But really, as far as I'm concerned, whenever you have somebody who is invested in the quality of their work, like Mask, like myself, it's almost not a matter of if, but when they come out with some sort of project that justifies their time and their toils and justifies anybody else's time and toils in setting it up and playing it. And that's one of the things that I think when you actually experience something that is even just a tech demo of high quality work, of what high quality work would look like in this environment or in this genre, that provides you with really valuable, like a baseline expectation almost. It provides you with a lot of information that you can internalize and decide, what was missing from this to level it up from tech demo to actual product. Not necessarily a commercial product in the way of that you're paying money for it, but simply like a project that you would be comfortable spending your time playing and really like what sets the bar, right? When you have people who are dedicated, I think it is indeed a matter of when, not if. Barring some really crazy real life shenanigans or me getting hit by a truck or something, I'm gonna keep working on StarCraft stuff, and really it would take a lot to stop me. And I should say I'm going to be continuing to work on RTS stuff because eventually I'll move on from StarCraft, and I don't know when that will be, and I don't know how many projects I'll release before then. But when people come back to StarCraft is another really funny thing. Like Mess coming back to StarCraft after going as on the record as a Discord message can be, but going on the record is saying he would never reinstall StarCraft again, or if he ever reinstalled StarCraft again, it would be a hilarious indictment of all of the other platforms he has to work within. That's really funny to me, man. That is something else. That's like holy shit, this guy's tried everything and nothing is even like after all the years of R&D he's put into StarCraft 2, after all the years of R&D he's put into Warcraft 3 and all these other platforms out there. I mean, with the exception of Unreal Engine, which he's not using for an RTS. He's using for a couple other things. That's just nuts, man. The idea that for any RTS project that he wants to work on, so, obviously say, barring the obvious make your own RTS that eventually the Frauds Club collective is going to jump out into. It's just crazy to me to think that he had to come back to StarCraft, like StarCraft 1. Now, admittedly, it is much more attractive now since developers like iQuare and Nave have been working on it. And I guess I can, like I was saying earlier about the whole programming thing, I can start to call myself a developer now, I suppose, like a tool dev or whatever. So I am technically working on a lot of reverse engineering and stuff now. So I can't promise you it'll be bug-free, but eventually we'll get there. Mostly because we got people like iQuare and Veek and Balethal who also give a shit about the quality of content that they attach their name to and that they work on and that they work within as far as game states and development environments go. So you can have, you can rest assured that if there's a problem now with the game that still hasn't been fixed, it's only a matter of time, barring some very obvious cases. Like we're not going to make a new rendering engine so that we can ignore the palette limitations, which would be really lovely, but apparently require like months and months of work, even if you knew what you were doing and had the source access, neither of which categories we fall into over at the Frauds Club. We've never worked with something like that before. So, yeah. At that point, if it gets to the point where something really large scale thing like that, or maybe like tearing open the sound engine in order to add more sound channels or something, if that's all we have left to do to make Brood War a more functional baseline for the RTS custom content community to continue working on content, at that point it's really just about like it's about time to work on your own RTS. I think it's just you're good to go, man. You've done so much else, because there are a lot of really dumb things that still happen, really stupid limitations that I've had my eye on for a while. And I got to say that now that I've got the wherewithal to actually start working the skills that I've developed working with programming, and I hesitate to use the term skills because I am still very young and I still make a lot of mistakes. As far as my career in programming goes, it's just a couple weeks old, I think, or maybe 2 months at most. So I'm pretty dumb about it, but I'm still throwing myself at it day in and day out, and that will always yield results, especially if you give a shit about the end result, like I've just been talking about this whole time. So I suppose the title of this DADCAW really ought to be "If You Give a Shit" or "When You Give a Shit." ... And maybe that'll be some clickbait. But at the end of the day, that's pretty much my DADCAW. I know it was pretty rambly and meandering, but hey, it's 11:45 p.m. now in the evening. Uh, I like how people say p.m. in the evening, just like people say a.m. in the morning, 8 a.m. in the morning, destroyed. But yeah, what do you want from me? You want something cogent? Man, I had so much food today, I can't even think. And of course, we have to celebrate America Day, not only with giant explosions in the sky, but also epic amounts of protein. That's what makes an American. So I hope you had a lovely America Day. And I hope you enjoyed this ramble, I guess. Well, yeah, I do hope you enjoyed it. I am trying to get a little bit more cogent. I think I actually have gotten more cogent, generally speaking. There's a lot of uhs and ums still sometimes, especially when it's with something like what I'm dealing with right now, like really late at night stuff where I'm trying to finish up a DADCAW. I think that generally speaking, I'm pretty good about that stuff. Like you listen to some of those commentaries that I provide for the castovers or for the custom campaign playthroughs, or even the conversations that I have on my mod streams. I feel like I'm much more put together at that point. So maybe it's just one of those things where I should start recording these DADCAWs a bit more earlier in the day when caffeine's still pumping through my veins. But time will tell all things. Time will tell us where we go from here. But yeah, I know I already released a channel map where I talked about my plans, but I think that the plans for the whole StarCraft campaign playthrough are going to go forward relatively soon. The real crux of it all is I don't really have a great amount of time to dedicate to pet projects and side content. Like the reason why I haven't really worked on Inconsummate, for example, or a lot of other projects lately is that I've just been so damn busy, for one, learning all these new skills like ASM and Rust and reverse engineering. I've also been trying to figure out shit like, just how do I balance time such that I can work on Hydra and, map craps occasionally, I guess, at a reasonable pace without just losing my mind. And, the fact that I now have been working a legitimate, quote unquote, real job or whatever for the time that I have been, it's pretty crazy. It's one of those things that I think ends up, feeling like, I think I started almost a year ago now. Like time really has flown by because I started it last year, so closer to a year than not. And the amount of time that could have been channeled into StarCraft content, or just other things like Unreal 4 development or video editing or whatever, if I wasn't so unfortunate in many ways to have to worry about money at all, really is stops to make you think. If you think about all that stuff, you'll go crazy because it's like the shit that what might have been, the tragedy of what might have been, had things gone a little bit differently. But hey, it also could be a lot worse. I could have none of the blessings that I currently do have. So I guess it splits the difference. You just it's all a wash. Something like that. I don't know. Trying to find some positive way to segue out of here. Close out the video. I don't know. Happy America Day again. I haven't said that enough, so bye.